Hi guys, welcome to another Divi theme video. This is Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Well, today we're going to be looking at the awesome Divi Person module. This is another video in our series of Divis for beginners, and you can find the link to that playlist down below this video. If we look down below here, we've got three little people, and we've got their info, their position, a little bit of content about them, and their little social medias here. And with a bit of work, you can make these a lot more interesting by doing different things. Here we've got some with some black and white images, card type things. When I roll over the image, it's going to give you a color version of it. Little interest value. And down here we've just got three images of our team members here. When you hover over, it's going to come up with their details. Really easy to do. No coding involved in this today. We're just using the Divi Person module and a bit of onboard styling. So let's get started. I'm going to enable the Visual Builder. And once loaded, let's roll down to where we want to work. I guess I'll start a new little section or a new little row. Let's start a little row. I'm going to click on the row above. I'm going to hit the little plus sign to add a new row. Put however many columns you want in your row. I'm going to stick to 3 as that's what we've got above. And when you've put your rows in, it's going to prompt you to put in a module. We're going to use the Divi Person module, and these are all in alphabetical order. So it's going to be down here under the P's. There it is right there. Okay, we put one in. Put whatever the name is here. What their position is, if you want to put it in. If you don't want to put something in, simply delete it, and it just won't be there. Let's say CEO. Now, if you want to add their Facebook, X and LinkedIn profiles, you can do so right here. Just put in, obviously, the link to their pages. Once you put the link in there, as you can see, the little social media icons are going to show up. If you decide, well, you know, I want more than that, you could just delete these. Again, if you delete something, those are just not going to be there, as you can see, or as you can't see because they've gone down below. If you wanted to add more social medias to the bottom, you could actually add a little social media module to the bottom of your person module there. There's a social media follow, and that will give you the option to add all kind of different social networks, and we've covered this in previous videos. It's a great little module. But that's not what we're doing today. So let's get out of here and we'll delete that. And we'll go back in here and add those little socials back in. I'm just putting a hashtag in for a placeholder. Like I say, once you put anything in there, they'll turn up. Great. Obviously, put what you want your content to say down below here. I probably have a little bit less than that info-wise, but that's entirely up to you. I'm going to leave it on the generic for the time being. Image, obviously, is the image that goes up in the profile there. Just click on it. It'll take you to the media library. Pop in any image you want. I'm using square images for mine because quite often, as you can see from some of these above here, I like to make things round occasionally. If you use square images, you can make them round, and I'll cover that in a minute. But if you don't want to use a square image, you can use any kind of image you want. And that'll work just as well. Like I say, I'm going to stick to the square because I'm going to make this round in a minute. Great. Well, I don't really want this to link to anywhere. Or if you've got a page about this chap's services, perhaps you might want it to link there. And that when they click on the actual module itself, that's where they'll take it. If you're taking it to your own site, leave it in the same window. If you're going off-site to somewhere else, open it in a new tab. That's always best practice. Okay, background. We've done a whole video on backgrounds. You can get so many great things going. I'm going to leave it just as it is for this particular one, and I'll perhaps do backgrounds in the other ones. So I'm happy with our content there. Let's just move over to design here. The first one is icon. That's our little social media icon. I'm just going to turn them to the blue I've been using on this site. I think I'll make them a little bit bigger. Let's say 25 pixels or something like that. Looks a little big to me, maybe 20. And obviously this is subjective. You do exactly what you want. I'm just trying to show you how easy it is to do it. Image itself, if we go in there, you can add rounded corners and borders and things like that. Let's just perhaps give it 10 pixels. Just gives it a little curl. The higher the value you put in here, the larger the corners are on there. I think 10 will do for that. Great. If you want to, you can give it borders, box shadows, which for the generic one right here on a white background works quite well, but that's entirely up to you. And we'll be applying filters in a different one in a moment. Now the text. Text is generic. It'll do both the title, the position, and the content there. I'm going to flip that all to the middle. But of course you can do them all individually, and you can either roll down and click on their various tabs here, or you can roll over the actual info itself. Each one has a little paintbrush associated with it, which will take you straight to that particular item, which is our title text there. It's an H4, that's fine. Divi's got a crazy amount of fonts, as I'm sure you probably know. To audition one, just roll over it. It'll give you an example. I'm going to leave mine all on the defaults today. I think I will make that semi-bold. Let's perhaps capitalize it and make it that default blue color. Obviously you can make the writing bigger or smaller if you want to. I'm going to leave mine just like that. We'll do the same for the CEO text there, or the position text. Click on the little paintbrush, takes you right there. I'm going to turn it blue. Let's make that bold perhaps. Fantastic. Well, for me that's pretty much all I'm going to do for that particular one. If we save that now on the white background, that looks like a fairly sort of normal thing to see for a team section. And of course the best way of doing more of these is not to start again from scratch. Just duplicate it. So let's hit the two little duplicate module squares there. We've got one underneath. Drag one of them across, doesn't matter which one, they're both identical. And that way you've got all your styling. You just go in there, flip out the name, position. Obviously you want to change those URLs there and the little details about them, and of course change the image out. And that's a real basic one right there, but it looks fine. And I use these quite often on corporate sites for clients. Well, for our next one, we've got some little rounded images that are going to change to color when we roll over them. We made them all the same height, even though they've got different content. So let's do one of those. If we roll back down, let's get rid of this one. I won't set it all up again. We'll just go into this one and change it into that one you saw above. I'm going to go in there. Everything's exactly the same under the content tab, their name, their profile, etc. In our design, I'm going to go into the image. I want to make it round. And remember, this will only work if you've got square images. So this square image, I can make it round by changing that 10 pixels. Make sure that chain is checked so it does all four sides at once, to 50%. 50 and the percent sign. We've got a nice round image there. Now if you're using elongated image, oblong, then you're going to end up with an ellipse like that. If that works for you, fine. Now if you want to, you can put borders around it and things like that, and I'm going to do that in a moment. But with this one, I kind of left everything like it was, and I went into the column that it's sitting in. Let's just save this. We'll go into the row, green tab for a row. We've got 3 columns here. Let's go into our first one. I'm just going to give it a background color. I'm going to go down to background. I don't want it fully black. I'm going to use 2424 grey, dark grey, that I quite often use. And because we've got no background in the actual module itself by default, it's going to show the background color of the column in the background there, which works quite nicely. And if you've got a row here, remember you've got to do that for each column in the row. We can just save that. And the easiest way of doing that, actually, I'm going to give that slightly rounded corners, that column right there, which is always under design, under border. Let's give it perhaps 10 pixels like we did above. It's got little rounded corners. Great. And as I was saying, You save that and go back into the main row settings with all columns. If you want to do that for each of these columns, you can do it very easy by right clicking, extend item styles. Just want to extend it to this row. That way when you put your new modules on each of these, they'll have that background color. You just want to extend to this row. You won't see anything because there's no content in those at the moment. You may see a little dark line at the top. I just hit the extend at the bottom. When you're happy, we can save our row settings, get out of there. Now if I copy this over, just clone it again for an example, drag one over, it'll have that same background in the bottom there. Okay, well, I made this a little bit more interesting by going into the image there, over to the design and image. I put a border around it. I think I put sort of 10 pixels. You can choose to put a border all round, top, right, bottom or left individually. I'm going to stick to all 4. I'm going to make mine, let's try 10 pixels and see what happens. Yeah, that's sort of shrinking down. I might even up that to 20 pixels. You see it's got that sort of slightly lighter grey border around it. That's the default colour of your fonts actually, but of course you can make that any colour you want. And if you wanted to just blend it into the background, you could use the same colour as before, which was that 2424. And it would just be a smaller image in the background. And if you wanted to reduce it further, just add more border width behind it. So I'm going to take that back to how it was, about 20. I just reset it to the default there with that little curled arrow. If I do that again, if I put a black in there, see a little curly arrow there. If you want to reset it to the default anytime, just click on that little arrow there. It's gone back to how it was. That works for me. All I really want to do is put a bit of padding around the side of this so it's got a bit of breathing room in there. I might make that writing white, and we'll put a little hover effect on the image. So let's go up. We can close up our little image for the moment. We'll come back to that in a moment and do a hover effect. I'm going to roll down to spacing. That's always where you'll find padding. I'm just going to give it perhaps 20 pixels all around. Just put in 20, it'll put in the pixels for you. Hit the chain, it'll do the opposite side. And we'll do the same for left and right. And that's a nice looking little person card. But I thought I'd make it a little bit more interesting by making it black and white at first, and when you hover over it, let's have it go to color. So if we close up spacing, we can go back into that image up the top there. If we roll down, we've got some filters. Remember, this is in the image tab, not under the filters tab. It's got its own set of filters on the image. I'm going to use saturation. What that's going to do is take it from color to black and white, or oversaturate if you take it to the right. But I want to create it only on hover. And again, common to all Divi modules, if you roll up over, if there's a little arrow on anything, we can create a hover effect. Desktops when your mouse is not on it. Hover obviously is when your mouse is hovering over it. So for desktop, I want to turn that black and white. So make sure you're on the saturation or whichever one it is you want to affect. I'm going to take this all the way down. My little fella's gone black and white there. Then when they put their mouse on it, I want it to turn to color. So I'm going to take it back up to 100% or wherever suits you. Now the time it takes with Divi by default to go from desktop mode, black and white there, to hover mode, the color version, is 300 milliseconds. If we go over to our advanced tab, you'll always find transitions in the advanced tabs here, and you can change it right here. I'm going to sort of double that. Let's make it 600 milliseconds, just over half a second. Don't want any delay. I want it to happen as soon as they pop their mouse on it. And the transition speed curve I like to use for this is ease in, ease out, or ease in, out. That way when we take the mouse off, it kind of eases back out. Great. Well, I'm happy with that. And again, once you've done one, easiest way is just clone it. Got all your styling in there. We put that color background already in the column. We put that color background in the column. Just go in, change the details there. Fantastic. Last one we had was just an image, and then when you hover over it, it's going to turn into the details. You're probably ahead of me on this, but for anybody that isn't, I'll go through it. Let's just duplicate one of these modules again, which is the basic. There it is down below. And I'll work on this one. I'm just going to go in there. Like I say, you're probably ahead of me. I'm going to leave everything text the same. Image though, I'm going to go into the image. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to hit the little trash can right there. And what I want first, and you can do it any way round you want. You can have the text first if you want, like this, and then fade into an image. I prefer to have the image then fade into the text though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. We're going to go into the row that it's sitting in, or actually the column that it's sitting in. I need to put this in a new row actually, because we're in the same row as we are here. So let's just add a quick new row. I'm going to put 3 columns in it, just like we did before. Don't need to put a module in there. I'm just going to drag this one down with its little handle there into my first column. Great. So now I'm going to go into the actual row. I'm going to go into the column that it's sitting in. I'm going to put that image in the background there. Always find background under content. And we've got image is the 3rd tab in. And whatever image you want to use for yours, obviously. And as you can see, it's behind there. Just like when we put the background color in for this one right here. But of course, I don't want to see any of that image. So what I'm going to do is save this. Save the main row settings. We're going to go back into our module now. I'm using a white background here, so I'm simply under content always going to go down to background, give that a white background, and that image is behind there. Now to make one fade from one to the other couldn't be easier. Like I say, I think you're probably ahead of me from the last one. If we go over to our design tab, we've got filters down here. Remember, this isn't in the image, this is its own filters tab under the design here. I'm going to use opacity to flip that from visible to invisible so we see the image. So if we roll down, here's opacity. And we've got to do the same thing. We've got to roll over it, get the little icons up, a little arrow for the hover effect. Now, depending on which way around you want to do yours, if you want to do the text first, leave it like that. I want the image first, so I'm going to take it all the way down here. So our module's invisible now. Then when they hover over it, I want that to come back. I think I want this content though to just have a bit of spacing all around, so it's sort of slightly more in the middle of the image. If I take that back down, you can see where it is on the image right there. I want a bit of spacing all around. I'm sure you know how to do that. Let's close up our filters here. There's spacing just up above. Again, I'm going to give it, say, 20 pixels all around. Same way as we did before. Same for the other side. Great. And we're all obviously on the hover state now because we can't see the image. Yeah, I think that's going to work for me. And again, if you want to change the timing over in advanced transitions, slow that down a little bit for a bit of drama. And use my hover effect go-to, which is ease in, ease out. And we should be good to go. Let's save our changes now. Let's save the page changes and make sure all these are going to work on the front end. And exit the visual builder. And if we roll on down, there's our originals. There's the one we just did with the image first. And when we hover over it, it's going to take 600 milliseconds for the details to come in. Take your mouse back off again. It'll ease back out. And let's have a look down here. Here's the ones we did with the color fade. That's a nice little thing. You see that quite a lot. The only other thing I was going to show you was I was going to show you if we have different content, how to keep these the same height. So let's just quickly enable the visual builder. And let's just roll down. And I'll keep this very quick, but it's a handy thing to know. Let's just copy this fella over again. I'm going to clone him. And remember, we put that background color in the actual columns that we're using there. Now, like I mentioned earlier, quite often when you're doing these things, they're going to give you different amounts of content to have in there. If you want them to all be a common height, very easy, especially because we put this in the column. Go into the row, green tab there, over to design, sizing, little switch there that says equalize column heights. Flip that to on. If I roll down there, let's get this out of the way. You can see, although we've got different amounts of content in there, these are all exactly the same height, and it's going to take it to the height of your highest one there. For instance, if I chop some of these off, it won't make any difference. They're all still the same height. And as I was saying earlier, if you don't want to put your social medias in there, if you want your social medias on the bottom, an easy way of doing that would be to get rid of those. We go in there, I'll show you exactly how to do that. Let's just add social media module. And we'll just align them in the middle. Obviously add as many or as few as you want. If you want to give it a bit of padding on the bottom, you can do so right there. And then of course you'd want to go back into this module, get rid of the links you're not going to be using there, which will make them disappear. And of course you can do exactly the same. I just clone that module. I'm sure you get the idea. Great, well let's save this and we're done. So there you go guys, that's an overview of the Divi Person module. Really great for building your team sections and things like that. You can go from regular layout to adding a little bit of interest value by adding hover effects, filters and backgrounds and things. Great thing to have on your site. Once again, this has been Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Don't forget, if you have any questions, pop them below the video. I'll do my best to answer them for you, or make a little demo video like this one. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.